love my job, even though it wasn't part of my life plan. Truth be told, Catholic Charities Fort Worth isn't where I thought I'd be, and fund development isn't what I thought I'd be doing. But every morning when I go to work, I know I'm doing exactly what God has planned for me. I started at Catholic Charities Fort Worth 9 years ago, but my journey really begins in the summer of 2000 at a Christian conference in Memphis, Tennessee called One Day. One Day's goal was to unite college students in prayer and inspire them to make a lasting difference in a generation. The pinnacle moment of that weekend for me happened while listening to a particular message about the importance of living a life that really counts, not only in this life, but for eternity. And I heard a story about an 80-year-old missionary woman from a church that had recently been killed when her brakes failed and she drove over a cliff. The accident happened in Cameroon, where she had spent her entire life completely dedicated to making Jesus Christ known among the sick and the poor in the hardest and most unreached places. Then he told another story from Reader's Digest about a couple who had recently retired early, moved to Florida, and spent the rest of their days walking along the beach collecting seashells. He then asked a question that changed my life forever. Which one of these is a tragic story? I knew in that moment that I wanted my life to look like that missionary woman, because there was no doubt that she had spent her life doing what she had felt called to do. So I committed to making my life count through the act of serving others. 4 years later, I gave away everything I owned, and I moved to China to teach writing at a university with the ultimate goal of sharing the gospel with my students. My time in China was incredible, and being able to see the impact that I could have on my students meant the world to me. After 2 years in China, I decided to move to Fort Worth, Texas, to attend Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, but I had no intent of staying long term, even after taking a job at Catholic Charities Fort Worth, teaching ESL to refugees. I even remember being asked in my interview at Catholic Charities where I saw myself in 5 years, and I said China. And though it didn't take long for me to fall in love with Catholic Charities Fort Worth, this wasn't what changed my mind about Catholic Charities becoming my home. Once again, the moment that led me to an answer happened with a question. When I met Thamer, I was still teaching ESL to newly resettled refugees from all over the world: Burma, Bhutan, Moldova, Sudan, the Ukraine. But Thamer's situation was unique because he was from Iraq, and Iraqi refugees were being resettled because they were being persecuted for aiding the U.S. during the war. Thamer was not coming from life in a refugee camp. He had not been unemployed or denied access to education while waiting for the hope of a new life. He had a PhD in art and was a well-known artist and sculptor throughout the Middle East. Thamer had been resettled by another agency, but still landed in my ESL class to prepare for employment, though he spoke excellent English, having been an interpreter for our troops. After about a month of living here, Thamer came into my classroom beyond excited because his case manager had gotten him his very first job interview. Since he knew I was a woman of faith, he asked me to pray for him, and I couldn't wait for next week's class to hear how the interview went. But the next week when he walked in, he solemnly told me that he had indeed gotten the job. I couldn't understand why this man that had wanted nothing more than a job to provide for his family since the day he arrived seemed so disappointed when he had finally found one. It was then that he told me his new job was packing pickles at a pickle factory. And this 6'6", PhD educated, gifted artist with the ability to speak multiple languages spoke directly to a part of me that I did not know existed. With tears in his eyes, he said, "Is that my value? Is this all that I'm seen as being capable of doing?" Immediately, I moved from part-time ESL instructor and became a full-time job developer at Catholic Charities with Refugee Employment Services. My goal was to never let another individual feel the way that Thamer felt that day, undervalued, unappreciated, unrecognized for the skills and strengths that he could offer. Thamer was able to move his case to Catholic Charities Fort Worth, and I helped him get a job as an interpreter at a local base. I took him to local museums, art dealers, and shops, helping him show his artwork. This process was time-consuming, and honestly, it would have been easier and faster to put him in a simple entry-level job. But to do so would be at the expense of creating a lasting impact that treats each person with dignity and emphasizes self-worth. Thamer was underestimated, like so many of the people we serve have been. But at Catholic Charities Fort Worth, we strive on a daily basis to see each and every individual as a whole person. This is how we give them hope. And this is what made Catholic Charities somewhere that I want to call my home. Our work is firmly rooted in our organization's core values of respect, integrity, compassion, hospitality, excellence, and stewardship. And I have the opportunity to see these values brought to life by our amazing staff, our amazing volunteers, and those that we serve. It is this combination of tenacious clients and compassionate staff and volunteers that show me the infinite possibilities that exist when the human spirit answers its own call to action. Our organization's goal to end poverty is a radical one, but what I love most about Catholic Charities Fort Worth is that we're not afraid to take risk in our relentless pursuit to achieve it. We're here today because we're not afraid to ask that same question that changed my life 15 years ago. Are you making your life count? Catholic Charities Fort Worth will not be a tragic story in its next 100 years of service. We are not satisfied with the status quo, and we refuse to waste the opportunity we have to create real change.